series. And as we grow it, we're very appreciative of the support of our sponsors. Here in Manchester, it's Bellwether Community Credit Union, represented today by Brian Kelly and Mike Pereira. Are there? Great. Thank you for being here. And of course, mention also the Letty Group for their generous sponsorship of the version of this that we do out on the Seacoast. Before we begin our introductions of our panel, I just want to provide you with a few updates of the university. As you know, I'm sure there's always quite a bit going on here. This past weekend, we held actually 4 commencement ceremonies. It's the first time we've had to do that. They're just growing. As you know, our online population's been growing quite a bit over the last few years. The work of the team there is such that the students are so happy and appreciative of the program. They're truly flying around all over God's green earth to come here for that event. It's a testament not just to the faculty in that program, but also to the advisors and the support of people such as Tiffany and her online community and others. And they feel a real part of it, so it's great to welcome them into the community as we do our traditional students. We've added over 2,000 members to the Alumni Association this weekend, bringing our number to over, anyone want to guess? How many alumni do we have? 5? What? 4? 5? How many? No, I'm not asking who's alumni. I'm saying how many. I thought you said we have 4 alumni. I was like, oh. Now, how many alumni do you think we have? I got to get closer to the mic. All right. I feel like Donald Trump does. How many alumni do you think we have? Oh, come on, you work in the program. That's not. Oh, yes. Good guess. This year we brought an increase through our Alumni Engagement through our programs. Christy and her team have brought on programs. One is related to today's topic. It was our Global Days of Service, which ran through the month of April. We're happy to report we had over 50 projects, 53 projects actually, with 469 volunteers, 2,134 hours work. It was a nice cross pathway. It wasn't just alumni that were involved. We had students involved in this from all over the country, including online students, family, friends, adjunct faculty, etc. And we're looking forward to growing this and expanding this in the coming year. We've had several major construction projects going on. Currently underway is including the Gustafson Center, which, if you've noticed, is now a big steel frame right up the street. That will serve the life cycle of the SNHU student housing admissions, career services, and the alumni engagement departments. So, pardon me, on to today's program. Today's topic, a conversation in corporate social responsibility, the movement of business towards civic engagement. It's an opportunity to hear from our SNHU community members about their work in the field and how CSR can range from volunteering and philanthropic support to sustainability efforts and community collaboration. We'll hear a bit of information about each of the panelists and their organizations, as well as some insights and trends in the field as well. So we invite you to ask questions and offer your own expertise as we build on this conversation. And at this time, I will get out of the way and introduce Dr. Chris Matthews to start our conversation.
Perfect, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. Good morning. Always looking to make a grand impression in the morning. So good to see everyone. And this is truly going to be a conversation. So we're going to be up here basically having a conversation with you. We would love to have your input, your questions, your feedback. And I would like to begin by just asking Kim and Gary to basically just kind of introduce themselves to you. So you can get a kind of sense of what experience they bring to the table, and then we can move forward with that. So Kim, would you like to start, please?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Blanchard. I'm the Development Manager for New Hampshire for the National Multiple Sclerosis Society Greater New England Chapter. I am a 2011 alumni of Southern New Hampshire University's graduate school program. I have my master's in sport management. With my position with the National MS Society, I am responsible for all of the Walk MS and Bike MS events here in New Hampshire. We have 8 walks and a bike ride out on the seacoast. And with that, I am responsible for recruiting teams, working with volunteers and companies, sponsorship, corporate engagement, pretty much all aspects of the event planning for that.
My name is Gary LeMay. I work currently at the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative as a renewable energy engineer. That's the title I asked for when I took the job. I worked for 36 years in public service prior to that. I graduated from UNH with a degree in engineering, civil engineering. And when I left school, I wanted to get a master's in business. And I came to what was called New Hampshire College back then. And they were very accommodating and worked with me. I was living in Manchester at the time and got my MBA here. Currently, I work on strategy and solar. And I actually, when I went to the co-op, I wanted to work solar PV and electric vehicles. And I said, and I'll do whatever else you want to pay me for. So that, I had my priorities and they have theirs. I'm fortunate to be at that spot in my career. And been around a long time, as you can tell. I'm an old guy. But, you know, when I started, I would say that corporate social responsibility wasn't even a term. You know, it was get involved in your professional organizations, get involved in your community, and I would say that, you know, my schooling indicated that's what you should do, and the places that I work. So that's a little bit about me, and please ask questions.
Perfect, perfect. So a question that I'm often asked is, how did you end up, speaking to me, myself personally, how did you end up at this wonderful campus of Southern New Hampshire University in Manchester, New Hampshire? Because you typically don't look like you come from here. And so I'm from a small city, a small country city in Strawberry Plains, Tennessee. I grew up on a pig farm in Tennessee. And I knew at an early age that I was going to have to go to college because I just did not like working with the pigs. And so as a kind of grassroots, sustainability was all what we did at running the pig farm, right? So you had to be aware of your resources, how much food were you feeding the pigs. And so sustainability was always part of kind of my DNA. I made the decision to go on to college and did my doctoral studies in Chicago and started working for a university, Roosevelt University in Chicago, that really kind of opened my eyes to sustainability in a completely different way. And really, I started at a personal level, really wanting to get my students involved in the community, to really see what direct change and what direct involvement they could have. This past summer, I was able to take 10 students to Chicago to work with a plethora of nonprofit organizations in Chicago. One of the organizations that the students worked with was the Center for the Center for Neighborhood Technology. And it's basically the think tank of the Chicago area. The organization was founded in 1985, and it has done this amazing work of really looking at social issues in the community and coming up with business solutions to solving those social problems. And so the students from Southern New Hampshire University had this amazing opportunity to work with these entrepreneurs in this very kind of isolated situation. And the feedback that I got from the students was that it was simply amazing. And so we talk about this term, corporate social responsibility, and we can all agree that over the past few years, it has definitely evolved. And now more businesses are having this conversation. You go to their website and you will see pictures of their employees getting involved. And what I would like to begin, maybe Gary, if you could basically, based on your experience when you were working with the now Eversource, what was their kind of view of corporate social responsibility? And how did they communicate that to the employees?
I would say that, well, again, as I indicated earlier, when I got out of college and started to get involved in things, I was getting involved in my engineering societies. And some of my coworkers and bosses at PSNH, again, encouraged that. You know, I went from being in the American Society of Civil Engineers to the National Society of Professional Engineers. And then as time went on, as you indicated, Chris, things evolved, and we want to get more involved. And I think part of it is that as businesses maybe get smaller in their local community, they want their employees to be more involved, so there's still a better attachment. And that's some of what went on. We encouraged to join your Rotary Club, your Lions Club, your Chamber of Commerce. And that kind of got things started. And I think that's important. They also encourage people to be in your leadership classes that are offered around the state as a way to give back to your community, get involved, but also it helps the businesses understand what's going on in the community, get you a little closer to the community. So that's some of what occurred, and it's evolved to a lot more where, now on the board of New Hampshire BS Business for Social Responsibility, and we have many companies that, do as small things as they can to get started, to those that are your B Corps or your benefit Corps. So there's a whole range, and I would say Eversource, PSNH was good at encouraging that. Things like fundraising for Easter Seals, the United Way, or various events was very strongly encouraged.
Yeah. Do you think that there was much of an impact on you and your professional kind of development, having that involvement?
I think so, because I continued to get involved, and one of the things I think every not-for-profit group in the state, and probably everywhere faces, is you've got a lot of people that are working and volunteering, but they seem to be in multiple things. And there's still some that aren't involved, so how do you get them involved? So for me, yes, I was involved, and you look on the bio, became an officer in many organizations, and some I'm still a member of, but not as active anymore because I'm doing other things. So I think it's important. I really do think being involved in the community is important. I think it's important for you to pass it on to your family members.
You speak about that community involvement, and it truly is important. When I first came to Southern New Hampshire University and I was looking for an opportunity for my students to participate in the spring semester in the community, I did a Google search on walks in the Manchester area that occurred in the spring. And the first walk that I found was the walk that Kim oversees, the National Multiple Sclerosis. And at that time, I had no idea that Homegirl was an alumni of Southern New Hampshire University. I was like, you need to help her brother out because I want to get these students in the community and I want to make it an amazing project. But instead of just having the students participate in the walk, I sat down with Kim and we actually developed a game plan. And that game plan was, we came up with 4 organizational problems that the organization was facing at both the national and the local level. And then the students had to come up with real solutions to solving that particular problem. And then the celebration experience, if you would, is that they were able to participate in the walk and then also present their final results, their final recommendations to the organization. So it has really been a relationship that has grown and developed over the past 4 years now. It's amazing. And Kim, I would like to ask you, do you see that there has been in the last few years or so, a trend in more companies wanting to be involved in these kind of volunteer, participating in walk events and things of that sort?
I would definitely say that there is more of a trend going to that direction of companies wanting to be more engaged. When I first came onto the National MS Society, most of the corporate teams or companies or sponsorship that I worked with, they had a close connection. They had a tie to multiple sclerosis. Either their manager had it or a close family member or friend had it. So that was kind of the organization and disease that the company rallied around, really wanting to get involved because they had that tie. Now we're seeing a lot more companies getting involved in multiple events because it's what they want to do. They want to really put their name out there. They want their employees more engaged in the community in different avenues. They might have done one organization in the past, but now they really want to kind of spread out and see what else is out there, really put more out there and do more good work in the community, which is really helpful for nonprofits such as myself and other area nonprofits as well, seeing that increase of support from different corporate relations and different company sponsorships.
And talk to us a little bit about what does it feel like when the event is actually happening and you have these volunteers coming in the masses, showing up. Describe to us kind of the energy, the feedback that you receive from those volunteers.
I'm very fortunate for the amount of volunteer support that I get, especially for the Manchester Walk we have in April. Working with Professor Matthews and his group from SNHU, I probably had, from SNHU, at least 50 volunteers, over 100 volunteers from other groups in the community, and it's an amazing feeling. The energy that comes from them, it's very exciting, especially when it's a brand new group and they've never really volunteered at a walk or an event of that size before. I have about 550 walkers, so put that with 100 volunteers, that's a lot of people all at the same place, all rallying around the same point. And for folks that have never been there before and it's their first time, for them to be able to talk to people that have MS, meet some of the big teams that are rallying around an individual that has it, it's really exciting to see it because they hear a lot of the good things that go on and they probably have a couple expectations of what they expect when they show up, but for them to be there and really be engaged and to really kind of get it, so to speak, when they arrive, it's exciting to see. And the feedback that I get after the event, emails coming in weeks afterwards saying, thank you so much for reaching out and having us be there. We had a wonderful time and we already can't wait for next year. And that's wonderful for me as an event planner to hear.
Thank you. So it's definitely like, if I'm hearing you correctly, is this win-win relationship that's created and both parties benefit, which is ultimately at the end of the day, that's the goal that we're reaching for. Gary, I would like to ask you, in your role as being on the board with the New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility, can you give us a sense of how you feel organizations, businesses in the New Hampshire area are responding to this whole corporate social responsibility?
Well, personally, I think that we're doing well. We can always do better. But we've got a lot of companies in our organization, a lot of people supporting us, a lot of members. If you're not a member, I would encourage you to maybe come to a meeting, come to an event. But it's growing, and that's the important thing. I think when the recession hit 6 or 8 years ago, it slowed down membership and everything. But we've got some good growth. You talk about the different groups. I have a son that has cerebral palsy. So we're involved in different things, and Special Olympics is one. And so I'm on the other end of it. When we go to an event, Special Olympics events, and you have all these volunteers helping, and we're just a family trying to get them to different events. The volunteers are important. Over the years, my involvement has been with a lot of customers, industrial, commercial customers. And you meet them, and they'd be at the event helping, and that's a really good feeling. So I think, the bottom line is New Hampshire is a very small state. You never know who you're going to see, where, and doing what. When we talked earlier about connections, I think about the job that I have at the co-op, which again is a very big supporter of us doing things to be involved in the community. I never even saw the job. It was a friend of mine from the renewable energy field that said, hey, you ought to look at that job. I said, I'm happy where I'm at. And so that's just all those interconnections. So when you're at an event like the MS Walk or Special Olympics or any of these other events you're organizing, you're going to make a connection. And again, you never know when it's going to come up later. And I think that's something to really, really remember, is that you never know who might be your boss next time. You never know who may be your contributor next time. So I think it's alive and well, and companies are doing very well in New Hampshire. But we are a small state, so we can have a lot of impact.
Right. And so you mentioned that there were maybe some opportunities that businesses in the area could take advantage of, be more insightful about. And so this is supposed to be a conversation. And so do you in the audience, do you feel that there are those opportunities for businesses in our area, in our community, to be more cognizant about corporate social responsibility? Or should we just continue as we are today? Now I got my professor hat on. Don't have me call you out. Yes, ma'am, please.
I'm Michelle Casey, and I think that a lot of businesses are finding that there's a lot of value in getting out and volunteering in the community. They're finding that their employees have more of a sense of purpose, so regardless of what their position is within a company, when they know that their employer is very supportive of an organization or of the community, I think they feel good about about where they're at, regardless of their position in the company. So I think it's a great way for companies to build, teamwork and really loyalty so that their employees stay longer with the company.
And Michelle, earlier, I'm just bringing you right into the panel. Earlier this morning, you had mentioned how two companies in particular were really encouraging their employees to be involved in the community as far as a volunteer perspective is concerned. Can you share that with us?
So I'm with New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility, and a couple of our members, including the co-op, are very active in community volunteering, and so they offer paid time to their employees to go out and volunteer, at the places of their choice. One of them is a company in the Upper Valley that no longer hypertherm. They grew from a small, garage operation to now having 1,400 employees, but they pay for 24 hours a year for their employees to go out, but they no longer have team building workshops. They actually use the volunteer events. They found those to be more effective than team building per se events. So they really use the volunteer opportunities as ways to further develop their employees.
Thank you.
So then I just go on, you've done a day of caring, which I've used those, and still might in the future, again, depending on the availability of time, but the same sort of thing, like Michelle said, you get all different people from different parts of your company together, and you see them in a whole different way. It's kind of like, talk about people playing golf for work, and you say, wow, they're just, kind of having a good day. But it does get you to see somebody in a different light. And I think businesses are starting to really think about that. We know that that's important. Okay, well, that's not just that supervisor that's always telling me to get something done. They call it a real person and a real other interest. That's part of why it's so valuable to businesses. Yeah.
Yes.
I say, I haven't worked in the nonprofit world. The value of the nonprofit, I'm sure you know, is you have all of these additional ambassadors now who better understand your mission, and it doesn't stay there. As they go and they tell other people about what they were involved in, and there's a greater awareness kind of ripple effect that gets created through that engagement. So there's a real benefit to being able to find ways for businesses to be engaged in that.
Do you think that just the more recent economic downfall that we're going through forced companies to still want to be engaged but realize they have people, they have human capital to spend, not just money, and they push people instead to say within our organization, instead of just giving $10,000, we don't have your people to produce something for you?
Yes, I think you hit the nail on the head. One of the things I always tell my students in my human resources course that employees are an organization's greatest resource. And so if that's the case, how can an organization successfully, effectively, efficiently utilize their greatest resource for the betterment of all society? And so organizations are definitely becoming more aware of that. Over the past week, faculty and staff were invited at Southern National University to participate in the community. And my team, we went to volunteer at Families in Transition on Canal and Market Street, downtown Manchester area. And we did some mulching and we were painting some walls and everything. And what I thought was so unique about it is that after the volunteer service project was over, the next day, a staff person from FIT, Families in Transition, sent an email to all of us that had volunteered and actually put a dollar amount of what our volunteer service brought to that organization in that particular time period. And so it's like, wow, this is some really amazing stuff that an organization from a financial standpoint can say that when you were pushing that wheel by, and it was hot. It was the one day that it was hot in New Hampshire, and I kept having these flashbacks of being back in Tennessee, and I was like, this is why I went to college. I don't want to be pushing this wheel by. But you're doing that, and you're like, wow, this is having such an amazing impact. And for the organization to be able to put a financial dollar to that, it actually became even more real, right? And so the appreciation, the motivation to be involved actually kind of became very heartfelt, and it wasn't just a let's go out there and do this little project. It became such that we're really having an impact on the organization. And so SNU has done a great job in really kind of encouraging not only faculty and staff to be involved in the community, but also for us to try to find innovative ways to kind of model that same behavior for our students who are ultimately going to be, you know, the future employees, future running these organizations in the future. When I first started introducing community service, CSR strategies into my classroom, I was like, you should do this because it's great. And they're like, well, what are you going to give me? Right? The students came in expecting something in exchange for it. And so we definitely had to build a culture around it. And so now the classes that are offered that have this service component are always the classes that fill up first. The students recognize it's going to be more work. The students also recognize that in return, they're going to get more out of it. Kim does not know this, but one of the first walks that we participated in 2012, 13, the first walk that we did with her, a student was very apprehensive about participating. She participated and she came to me before the walk and she's like, Professor, can I invite my family to come? And I'm like, sure, the more volunteers, the better, right? Her family showed up and her mother was just like in tears. And I'm like, okay, is she okay? Is she hurt? Like, what's going on? Why is she so emotional? And her mother pulled me aside and explained that her mother, the student's grandmother, had ultimately suffered this long life living with illness. And it was her first opportunity to kind of participate in this community event. And for her family, it became like a celebration of the student's grandmother's life. And they have been participating in every walk since that first opportunity, right? And so you may not see the immediate return on the investment, but it's there. I think it's very important for the organizations to begin planting those seeds, and the return on the investment will ultimately begin to follow and begin to come after that. Agree or not so much?
I agree. I have a past in the defense industry, and the company I was working with worked with a lot of veterans organizations as well as active duty military organizations. And on top of that personal connection helped underscore the business's mission, right? So being able to, for the employees who are either working in the factory or on programs, doing engineering things, suddenly be out working with members of the military, for them, it was this sort of eye-opening experience to understand how what they did in the world connected with this group of people, and it sort of underscored the mission in a way that they couldn't get through other avenues in the business.
Perfect, thank you. Yes.
Stand so you can hear me a bit better. It's a problem. I like what you're saying. It makes a lot of sense. I'm definitely supportive. Here's the problem that I encounter. I don't know anybody else. If anybody else here is at a publicly traded company, it's the battle between stakeholder theory and shareholder theory. So the pushback that I get when I take this to the senior leadership, the C-suite, or the board, is we have investors, shareholders, and they invested in us with the expectation that we're going to maximize their returns in the share price. If I'm diverting money from that investment to support a nonprofit or to donate or to divert my employees and their productive time during the day to volunteering, how am I maximizing the shareholder value? Like, how do I balance that, right? I argue the stakeholder theory, but I don't always win. But it's a very, they want an ROI, and I try to, and that's where I think there's a conflict, particularly at a public company.
Right. Yes.
I actually read an article recently that was written by Joe Keefe from Tax World, and I think they talked about it many times, though, that the portfolio, if you look at a portfolio of companies that are socially responsible and involved, they tend to outperform the same group of companies that are not involved in social responsibility. I can't remember the exact percentage that he used in this article, but it was substantial. So I think it's something that might be worth your time to do a little bit of research and just bring the actual financial results.
The last 10 years per se has garnered a lot of attention. And so organizations are looking for quantifiable ways to measure that return on their investment so that they can go to their stakeholders and say, hey, look how important this particular element of community service is for the bottom line of our organization. One organization that I have worked with on a personal level was facing with that. And so they contacted me and it was like, can you come in and basically tell us how much money this community service opportunity is costing our organization? And is it worth it for us to continue? The organization is located right outside of London. And what they do is that they produce furniture. And all the furniture is handmade. They cut down the trees, they produce the furniture, they have workshops, they have students that from the community that come in with these work-study programs to learn and understand the process. And then they were able to take the sawdust from the waste from the manufacturing of the furniture, and they produce such a some type of mixture so that the sawdust now serves as the main source for porta pots. So instead of using a liquid when you go into these porta pots, they now utilize this sawdust configuration thing. And once the waste comes in contact with the sawdust, it begins to kind of decompose and everything. And they wanted to know, well, what's the return on the investment for us utilizing this waste of sawdust and making this great new product? What is it really bringing back to our organization? And what we had to do was a lot of external surveys, not only with direct stakeholders of the organization, but also with individuals that were utilizing the porta pots. And so we did surveys, we came up with a dollar amount to really kind of add into that triple bottom line to give the organization the quantifiable numbers that they needed to take to their board to say, hey, we need to continue with this particular measure. I can almost guarantee that if we all have this understanding that employees are the greatest resource of an organization, we can all kind of have examples or some understanding that there are times that your employees are not going to be as productive as you would like. And so you may argue that, okay, I'm going to allow my employees to go out to the community, serve X number of hours on these volunteer projects, and in essence, that's going to take them from the manufacturing floor, that's going to take them from their day-to-day job responsibilities. Well, I hate to be the mother of bad news, but they probably ain't working anyway. Not at the level that you were expecting. If you were to allow them to go out in the community, become dirty, use their hands, volunteer, mentor, whatever the case may be, the return comes in on the investment once they return to the office, because in their life, that was a great experience. Let me get in and do what I got to do. Let me get it done. And that motivation is what the organization, it's very difficult for the organization to capture and put a dollar amount to it. We're becoming better at it. There's a lot of studies that are taking place now that's allowing industry leaders to become more aware of how to quantify that triple bottom line in a more succinct manner. But it's not an easy thing to do. We all know that it's worthwhile to do it, but it's not going to be easy. Which I think raises another question I would just like to kind of, oh, sorry.
Well, I just like to say, I think this question is a very good one, and yet I think there have been a lot of studies done, say the triple bottom line, and all that can show that employee morale, productivity, satisfaction, maybe their retention. The companies that do more of this have all those factors go up, which, in New Hampshire today with a low unemployment rate, everybody knows how hard it is to hire, everybody knows how hard it is to keep people. So that's the way that some companies go after it. And I think that's important. But social responsibility isn't just letting the employees volunteer. It's also maybe engaging them in ways to make your business more productive. Instead of telling them how to do things, build a group that says, how can we be more efficient with the products you're talking about, Chris? Or we have companies right here in the state that are part of the NHBSR that had a real issue with recycling stuff. And a lot of paper waste or product waste, and the employees got engaged and explained, well, maybe we can bring this back, and bundle it, and do it at more, let's say, instead of being in the remote locations and having them to dispose of things, we can bring it back and recycle it. And so it's not just getting them to volunteer and giving them time. Get them engaged, because they more than likely know how to make your business more efficient, more productive. So that's also a responsible part. And, maybe they'll have some input on, we could source this more locally and save a little bit on transportation. Or maybe you're employing, one of your neighbors. So the corporate responsibility is a much, much larger aspect than we've talked about when we've had time.
Thinking about how do you manage sort of unskilled versus skilled volunteers. We can have a group of students come in who are incredibly enthusiastic, but you might need help building a website in which you target businesses for that sort of volunteer.
That's an excellent question, and we always say that volunteers are the backbone for our events. So specifically speaking on the event side of things, we use multiple types of volunteers. I'm seeing more and more high schools that are requiring students to have community service hours. So if folks have high school students, you probably know, they are required to do X number of hours. And same thing with college students, which is how Chris got involved in my organization with the walks. Colleges are also requiring X number of hours before graduation. So we're having 16, 17, 18-year-old volunteers come. Super happy to have them. Sometimes it might just be, all right, I'm going to have you guys stand here at the start-finish line with some pom-poms and some cowbells and cheer on the walkers as they go by. And they have a great time with it, handing out finishing medals when they cross the finish line. So if you are a super skilled worker, if I can use you at the registration table, if I can use you in the office ahead of time, helping to send out email blasts and certain things like that. When I have a conversation with someone that wants to get involved and they have a group or organization that wants to get involved, I like to have a conversation. How would you like to get involved? What are your experiences? What do you want to have your volunteer experience be? Because it's going to be different for everybody and every organization. But I'm happy to work with anybody that comes my way for a mentor in the office. So I hope that helps answer your question.
I think also, though, some of the things that I've helped with is if you've got a specific task, you mentioned like accounting or a website or something, maybe mention a website. I've been in groups where when the volunteers came in, you got the skill set from them. Some of them are unskilled in what they need to do, and that's okay. But some, you can, if you're looking for a particular skill set, go and look for, hey, I need some help in web design, does anybody know this? And so you have really somebody coordinating at the company, who knows this and what can we do? So that's maybe a little more specific targeting of what is needed to be done.
I got one question. I'll try to limit them. I'm really glad that you brought up some of the other aspects of corporate social responsibility, because I do see it as evolving. It's not just about volunteering or charitable giving. It's about sustainable business practices. It's about organization and organizational leadership and aspects of that. My question is really kind of, and I don't mean to put them on the spot, but since we're here and we're talking about it, I think it's probably a valid question. One of the things that's been rising in CSR circles is this idea of how accurately does your senior leadership team reflect your employees in terms of demographics, in terms of sex, in terms of other things your board of directors do. Public companies get pressure to have more diversity. And again, I'm going to put them on the spot because we're here because I'd like to know. Southern New Hampshire University, if you were to look at the senior leadership team, doesn't have a single person of color on their senior leadership team. And it's only within the last 3 or 4 months, I think they opened up an application for a chief diversity officer, a diversity officer. So it seems like they're maybe headed in that direction. And I think the board of trustees at SNHU is maybe 11 people or 12 people. I think there's one person of color on that. So between the senior leadership team and the board of directors, I mean, it seems disproportionate with the employee base and the student base. It seems kind of out of whack. So I'm just curious what the university is doing for diversity and inclusion and things along those lines.
I can only speak for myself. I think the university has done a great job, but you have to also look at where we are. We're physically located in Manchester, New Hampshire. There ain't a lot of black folks in Manchester. And you're gonna really have to motivate me to walk my black butt to move to Manchester. And that motivating factor for me was the students here at our campus. And so when I was offered the position, I had the opportunity to actually do a mock class, interview class with the students. And that engagement with the student body actually motivated me that this was the right place. But on the outset, walking down Elm Street, I'm like, I don't know if I want to be living up in here because I don't see nobody that looks like me. I think the university is really trying to go above and beyond to make the administrative team look more kind of diverse, but it's difficult. And not only do you have to be aware of that, all organizations are facing that same kind of dynamic. So how do you recruit these employees from across the world to really give the learning experience to your students that they can kind of see what they're going to be experiencing once they leave Manchester, New Hampshire?
Okay, as a senior, member of the senior leadership team, I feel like I should answer what is a very good question. I thought, coming from Tennessee, you moved here for the weather. Yes, we have engaged actually a consultant to help us with this entire diversity question. And we are engaged in looking for a diversity officer. So it's easy to argue we are heading full barrel into this direction. When we have a relatively small board of trustees. We went from about 20 down to 11. Out of the 20 was what I would call a remarkably diverse group. But it's become a strategy board, and Paul is actively seeking to address that as well. It is one thing you don't want to do is just go. You want to bring somebody on the board that isn't just on the board to answer this question, but also contributes in a way that has the strategic elements that we have with other board members. So you're looking for the full mix right now. There is a single diversity, a person of color on the senior leadership team, but that still leaves it in the minority. There are no current openings on the senior leadership team, so I'm not sure that that's going to be addressed soon. But it's an issue, sure. I think, I know from conversations I've had with Paul, I know from conversations I've witnessed with President O'Brien, that this is a major focus of both the annual board at this juncture and the growth of the university. So, you know, I would agree with Chris. I think perhaps many of us would that you know, Manchester and New Hampshire presents its own issues around diversity. However, that's not a reason not to do it. It just, you know, you just recognize that it's a little harder here than maybe in Boston or somewhere else, but it doesn't shy us away from it, nor are we shying from it. So we have ways to go, but what I can say, rest assured, is we are going in that way.
Thomas, I'm supposed to overlooked you twice. Did you have a...
I could make an interesting comment, but all I can say along this line is totally different from my question.
Okay, well, your question's on.
No, it was, you know, basically ability is colorblind, right?
Yes, totally agree. Yes.
Right. The question I had, I came here with the idea of not talking about social opportunity, but I talked about social responsibility. And we haven't really discussed whether or not a business corporation has social responsibility in a philosophical term. Do you have any opinion on that? I'm saying, does the corporation have a responsibility besides just the bottom line to its investors?
There is a 15-week course on that at Southern University. So we literally spend 15 weeks on that exact topic. The course is titled Social Responsibility of Businesses, OL 326, and it's all about how do you really make it from that philosophical view, really kind of break it down such that the organization understands that they do have a responsibility not only to their immediate stakeholders, but also to what we call like the secondary stakeholders, not necessarily the ones that are buying the product or invested in the organization, but also for the community or the family members that live on the same block or in the same community as the organization. You have a responsibility to kind of take care of this greater world. Some organizations do a better job than others, but it's definitely not easy because organizations become so focused on the profit, right? If I'm not making money, I'm not going to be in business, so I cannot do both. It's impossible to kind of be cognizant of the greater world and still, you know, make money at the end of the day and be sustainable. I'm sorry, I didn't cut you off.
No, I agree with you. I think the businesses do have a responsibility. Either you're using human resources or using, you know, physical resources. So I believe that businesses do have some responsibility to it. Their core business is to save business because, you know, I'm on a nonprofit that takes care of people with disabilities, and I stay in the finance group because if we are not financially strong, we're going to totally fail our mission of providing help to people with disabilities. And so that's maybe my underlying, and businesses have to remember that. If they don't watch the bottom line and go out of business, they failed everywhere. They failed their shareholders, they failed their employees, they failed their community. So I think it's important. I think when you look at it as we're looking at really how small the world is maybe as a whole, and again, your benefit corps and your B corps and those, you know, that is, larger corporations more and more are getting to that triple bottom line. And more so maybe in Europe than here, but it's coming here. And part of it is that we've all seen the protests from different groups that don't like what a company's doing or go to a shareholder meeting. And I think that's, again, people are starting to understand that, you know, we can run our business and we can look at the bottom line, but we also got to look at the big picture. I think even individually we have to do that. So I think it is an important, I think businesses are recognizing that. Businesses are trying to do that. And again, it's, you do the best that you can. Everybody can't do everything and spend money on it. But you know, you start small and learn and do more and more. So I think businesses do have that responsibility. I know in the business I've worked in that they felt that, again, community is very important. And, you know, if you're in the community, oh, you're probably maybe a customer or a member or something. And there's an awful lot of little ties. So I think it is important. But somebody at the company has to focus on how to do it. And again, keep the company in business. There's a balance like everything in life. Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question from the nonprofit perspective. I just joined New Horizons for New Hampshire about 3 weeks ago. We're a local food pantry and shelter. And I came previously from the for-profit side working for advertising agencies. So I've seen some companies that have this mindset and others that don't. My question is, how as a nonprofit do you help nurture this mindset and work with businesses who are interested in you know, this, or maybe not realizing how important it is? What would you recommend?
And I'll just offer one example. Again, some of the nonprofits I'm on, we're out there looking for money, looking for support, looking for grants and everything. But we also encourage our employees to do your leaderships. We support a couple of people a year in one of ours to go through those. We encourage them to be involved in things and maybe participate in a MS walk or a day of caring or maybe a CASA or something. So that's the other way, because I think if you can give your employees a little bit of opportunity, and again, it might be just encouraging them to do it and giving them some flexibility of time. Maybe you don't even have to, you know, give time away to start with, but okay, you got a meeting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if you can make up that time on either end. That might be a non-cash or cost way of getting somebody involved. But I think those ties, like another lady mentioned here, the ties of your members and nonprofits with others eventually will help. That's my answer.
I know when I work with companies or organizations that say they want to get involved, but we just don't have the money this year to donate or to sponsor and come in at that certain level, that's fine. I think it's good to have different options for companies and ways for people to get involved. Yes, it's great to have the money, don't get me wrong. It's always good to have the sponsorship side for that. But there's a lot of other ways that they can be involved other than just money. Do they have something that they can provide in kind? Are they a restaurant or a distributor that can give bottles of water or snacks to people on the walk through? Is it an advertising or a media company that can help promote the event to the company statewide? Or is it something where you can get your employees together and form a team? Can they come out on a Saturday morning and walk together and see the event firsthand? Something like that on a Saturday morning, it's not necessarily cutting into your Monday to Friday schedule. Or on the same line of that, just coming out to volunteer at the same time as well. So speaking from the event side of things, there are a lot of different ways that companies and organizations can be involved. So I guess it's kind of important to go in with an open mind, I guess.
Do you think most of the interest comes top down from the business owners, or do you think it's driven by employees who then spread the word throughout their company and it becomes a company-sponsored event? I'm just trying to figure out kind of where are the entry points now?
I think it's actually both.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a quick example of the powerful use of LinkedIn. So I had put my profile on LinkedIn when I first moved to the New Hampshire area. And I get a phone call from an executive director of a small nonprofit in Manchester. And she's like, I just read your LinkedIn, would love to meet just for an info meeting, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, hey, holla. And so I'm like, yeah, let's meet. And so, she comes on campus and we meet, and she's describing the nonprofit organization to me. And she's like, based on your experience that you have listed on LinkedIn, I think you will be great for our board. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't even know your organization and you're asking me already to be on your board. But she had done her research, right? She knew exactly the skill set that she was looking for. And she also wanted to develop a partnership with Southern New Hampshire University. And so she was like, how can I do that? What's the best entryway? And so she contacted me 2 years ago, and I've been on the board for the past 2 years, appointed as board chair this last fiscal year. We created a whole fundraising event that's basically organized by one of my classes that further supports the organization. She's now on campus. She's hired interns from the university to support the organization, but she was able to make that connection. And it's a small nonprofit. They have one paid staff person. She's the only person. We have a small board of 6 volunteers on the board of directors. And she found that entryway. She was doing the research and she was able to make that connection. And it worked. It's been a great experience for me. Hopefully the organization has gotten something out of my expertise. I think they have. So it's certainly been a win-win.
But also from the bottom up, I think, ask the employees what they're interested in and what kind of group they might want to get involved, because that's going to give them a better feeling maybe of camaraderie or being involved and helping with it. So it comes from both directions. It really does.
I think we have time for one more comment or question.
Actually, we kind of continue on with social media and the question about our companies more socially responsible. In your course or your research, you find that social media visibility is at least creates pressure for companies to be more socially responsible. And as I was thinking of that question, I was thinking of the next one, the challenge, just how viral social media is. So, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's huge, especially with the current kind of generation, the millennials that are so connected. It's almost like if an organization doesn't have a social media presence, they're not going to be sustainable because it's so intertwined into everything that we do. There's Facebook, there's these LinkedIn, there's everything. And so a business is able to kind of promote what they're doing. They're able to do it quickly. They're able to kind of get the word out that we're volunteering. They're taking pictures. They're sending an email blast to their stakeholders, to their constituents. And so that the the platform of utilizing social media, I think, is definitely important. And if an organization is able to do it in a positive way, it can have a huge return on the organization in the long term, I think, as well as the short term.
Well, thank you, everybody. I hope that was met your expectations. I certainly thought it was nicely engaging. And of course, thanks to our panelists. On a few points to note as we conclude, our next business indicators after hours of this session will be held on June 29th in Rye, New Hampshire. The topic of the program will be authentic storytelling. The content marketing strategy with a brand in mind will feature SNHU community members Joshua Dodson and Pam South. We invite you to continue to be involved in the university in ways that are meaningful to you. We're currently seeking advisors for our SNUCAN, that is Career Advisory Network, which will serve students in SNHU communities by offering a self-service platform for them to reach out to members such as yourself to provide career-related information, such as information interviews, resume reviews, or generally just what can I do with the rest of my life questions. And it's actually for alumni to alumni too. So as we know, we never stop evolving. In closing, these opportunities are built from feedback we received from attendees such as yourselves. So if you'd like to be involved in the planning or have feedback for this series, please contact Christy or someone in our Office of Alumni Engagement. We welcome you to connect with each other before you leave. And as always, very appreciative to have your support for Southern New Hampshire University. Thanks so much.